SOC analysts are often overworked and underappreciated. In fact, many consider leaving their jobs or changing careers altogether. Devo is hosting the 4th annual SOC Analyst Appreciation Day to give analysts long overdue kudos and encourage organizations to improve their job satisfaction and mental well-being. Join Devo and other cybersecurity industry professionals on October 16th for sessions and panels focused on de-stressing, SOC career development, and more. Visit securityweekly.com/Devo to register. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. We're back with the security news. Mr. Sam Bound has joined us. Sam, welcome.
Good evening. Glad to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. I wanted to start with just a little bit of show and tell. I got these. My order from M5 Stack came in, and I think of Larry and Bill when anytime I do anything with ESP32 based devices.
Ooh.
So this is
What
an
is
M5
that?
Stack Core 2. It has little buttons on the front, and it's running
it's
Wi-Fi
nice screen.
hash monster, which is looking at all the Wi-Fi signals, looking for the handshake. WPA handshake. I don't know if it's got one. I got an SD card. It says it sees the SD card. So that was the firmware I got on that one. Then I also have the world's smallest. I don't want to do it right now, but I think this is like the world's smallest TVB Gone. So someone ported the TVB Gone firmware to an M5 Stack Atom S3 Lite, which this is a tiny little ESP32, and it totally works. What I realized was the diode on here for the infrared transmitter is very small. So I had to be really close to the TV to get it to turn off, which was hilarious.
Totally
Which
I
is
was like, oh, it's so cute. I'm like, oh, but I got to be like a foot from
and the irony is that the TV Be Gone thing is so small, but the battery pack is freaking enormous.
Oh, well, yeah. So the problem I was having is I just took it out of the package and it wasn't charged. So I had to. So I was like, I think it was turning off basically before it could cycle through all the codes.
Gotcha.
So I had to charge it, and it does blink. I don't want to push it now because the TVs will turn off, but it does blink an LED, green LED when it's transmitting. And I've started like looking at the code, and I'm already like plotting and scheming to make my own customizations to all that stuff. I've got another card pewter here with some infrared firmware on it as well. So yeah, you can check that, dude. That one's pretty cool. I think there's a battery pack. So there's 2 USB-C ports. One is on the battery pack that I think is just magnet attached to the back of it, because I think there's leads. The M5 Stack stuff is just.
What's the difference between the Core 2 and the Core S3?
One says 2 and one says 3.
No, the Core S3
no
is
shit.
the Core S3 is a touch screen as opposed to
Okay.
physical buttons. Yeah.
So what is this?
I have one of those too. I ordered one of those too. They're not that. I mean, as far as ESP32 gear goes, it's like the high end. Like you're gonna pay
It's
in
really
ESP32 terms a premium, right? Because I can go on AliExpress and order, a dozen of them for $11.99 plus shipping. But if you want kind of like the fancy stuff, they have a Grove connector on all of them, which lets you attach all kinds of like GPSs, and you can get external infrared transceivers. Actually, they have ones that have receive and transmit on them, and people make all kinds of different firmware for them. The firmware is just Arduino code, so I actually loaded some code like through the Arduino IDE on them, and you can make customizations to it. So I've been really digging the M5 Stack gear, and I ordered some of their other devices.
This one, the one with the screen running the Wi-Fi deal, the back feels loose and it's just like magnet. Is that the battery?
I think just rip it off. I think it's an extra battery for it.
You broke it.
It's like an extra battery pack for it, I believe.
Nice.
Again, I'm still trying to like figure it all out, get the lay of the land and all the different firmware. So it's fun. It's good stuff.
That is cool, dude.
Right.
I just stuck the link for the S3 in the in our Slack. It is the coolest. That like it's got connectivity pins for everything under the damn sun. It's ridiculous.
Yes. And they're not expensive. The add-ons are like between like $3 and $8, depending on what you're adding on. They've got LoRa.
The S3 with the touchscreen is only like $60. It's nothing.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, for an ESP32 with all the add-ons, like the card pewter's $30, man. But like it has a little screen and a keyboard and an infrared on it and the whole thing. Like it's it's pretty slick.
So I've never used the M5 stack, but from what I understand, it's an ESP32 based system,
Yep.
right? So
Correct.
and then
Correct.
what makes it nice is that the nice case and the way
Yes.
that they snap together or whatever.
And
Right?
they bolt on a bunch of stuff, and all their
Cool.
different platforms have different interfaces and like different stuff that they've bolted on to it.
And
So
their own firmware as well, I would assume.
no, people make all their own custom firmware, man. It's just an INO file. It's just an Arduino.
Cool.
Yeah, and there's multiple different firmwares, and people make all kinds of cool stuff that you can fork the repository and start customizing on your own. They've got M5 Burner, which allows you to like, it's basically like an app store for your M5 devices. So I'm having a lot of fun because like as you're learning, I recommend it for people that are like, I've never done anything with an ESP32. Like you can go spend like, $10
Yeah.
and get one of these devices. And then you can go to like the equivalent of the app store and just start messing with firmware, kind of seeing how it works. Great documentation on all the devices. And then you can kind of like progress from there,
So
which is what I like about it.
speaking of ESP32, so my story number 2
Yeah.
is Capybara Zero. Somebody's trying to build Flipper Zero for ESP32 boards.
But that a lot of the M5 developers have. So my one that's the closest to a Flipper Zero bill is called Bruce firmware.
I haven't seen that.
Bruce firmware is pretty close. Like they've got a lot of functionality to it.
Cool.
Evil M5 stack is also pretty close as well. A lot of them are trying. A lot of developers are trying to get as close to the Flipper Zero functionality with an ESP32 based system as they can, and you're making great strides.
So what's cool about that is with the ESP32, you get that Wi-Fi ability as well, right? So like that,
Yes.
that would be great.
Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So one of the ones, I think it's Evil M5 Stack Core. It's got Evil in the name. If you have a card pewter, it can act as like the master, and then you put the firmware on what they call slaves, and those can be.
We don't use those types of language anymore.
That's the language they use. I know. I don't know what to use in place. What do you use in place of master?
Primary and secondary.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll use primary. So you have a primary on your M5 stack card pewter, then you've got a secondary that's on supports the. I have them over there on my desk, but they don't have a display on them like this one has a display, or doesn't have a display. But there's even smaller ones than this. Like the cheapest M5 stack ESP32 can be a secondary, and you can get 14 of them, and I think the cheapest one is maybe $5 to $7 each. And
Nice.
In that configuration, they've written the code so you can sniff on every single channel. Now, you can do that cheaper if you were to just buy the ESP32s for $1 a piece, certainly. But you wouldn't get like the nice cases and stuff like that and whatever. But so you can kind of mix and match, do what you see fit. But there's a lot of cool projects out there that I've been. It's like my background project that's constantly going on is what else can I make all this M5 stack stuff do? And I've probably spent maybe $300 total, and I think I've got every single M5 stack device in multiple of them all, basically. So maybe for the price of one Flipper Zero, you could acquire quite a few M5 stack devices and be pretty close in functionality.
Yeah, and
So
by the time
the
time you get it all working and everything, you will have learned something too, rather than just pressing a button.
Correct.
On the Flipper.
Yeah. No, I'm totally using it for that to that end, Bill. So I went to GurCon with a bunch of these devices, and we gave them out at the Eclipsium table, and we were hacking on them and gave a bunch away because I just think it's a fun thing to do. A couple people came up, they were like, "Hey, I'm getting started in the field. Like, what do I need to know?" I'm like, "You here's one. You get that. Let me show you how to put the firmware on it and go do great things with it. And don't mess with people without permission. And now go forth and have fun."
Then, so what you're saying is social engineer them to get permission, and then, then you're good, right?
So to that end, Josh, the Bluetooth spamming stuff, if you flood Bluetooth low energy or do shenanigans with Bluetooth low energy, you could disrupt people's hearing aids, glucose monitors.
Yep.
Larry probably has one on right now.
Yep.
Right? Glucose monitors, in other types of medical and devices like that.
Yep, and
So
also some payment systems and so forth.
my watch won't all of a sudden will stop pairing to my phone. Like I have a Google Pixel watch, and it'll just stop pairing to my phone. So yeah, be careful with that stuff. So it's fun. What do we got for stories?
Well, we talked
Can
about
I
one
do
of Bill.
one?
We talked about one of Bill's stories, the Capybara Zero.
Mm.
And Bill, I was
can I
looking
do
at that
one real quick?
website, and it is really hard to follow. Like, how do I build one? It's at the bottom of the documentation.
Yeah, I
Not
know.
good.
Yeah. Well, it's a
So-
starting project, so
Sure.
like go visit and check it out.
Yep, and they don't even call it like how the docs, and it's called the scheme. And like,
So Bill, going to
Sounds
one
like
of
a
your
bad
stories, I
90s
want to go to
noir.
hold on. I want to go to Bill's story number 3 because I experienced this, and I knew this was coming. That Google has removed uBlock Origin from Chrome. They also removed my JSON plugin. So I had a plugin that would, if the website is just displaying raw JSON, would beautify it for me. And so when I logged into, fired up Chrome and logged in with my various profiles, it was like, oh, I'm removing these 2 extensions for you. And I'm like, is it a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Is there a reason? What is happening now? Now I still run AdBlock Pro. Malwarebytes has an extension. EFF makes an extension as well, more for privacy. So I've got like multiple backups, but uBlock Origin is gone. Is that a huge deal? Is that a deal breaker? Are you going back to Firefox because of it?
It's a deal breaker. So it was actually a deal breaker for me about a year ago. So I think Google announced some time ago that this was coming, that this change was coming, and I think even at that time they publicly announced that it's going to impact popular plugins such as and then
Yeah.
uBlock Origin, right? So I made the switch. I made the switch back to Firefox about a year ago, simply because of this. Like,
But how do you manage your Google profiles in Firefox, or you just don't?
What do you mean? I don't understand the
So
question.
like when I open up Chrome, I attach Chrome instances to Google accounts.
Yep.
And it kind of seamlessly goes together. And then wherever I log into, if I fire up Chrome and I log into my Google account, it brings in all of my plugins. It brings in all of my bookmarks. There's
gotcha.
a password that uses to sync all of that data. And it allows me to have multiple Google accounts attached to different Chrome instances. So like, this is my one for work. This is my one for my, RI Hackers, Google account. This is, I have some that are logged in as my kids for like school and stuff like that. And Firefox, you kind of lose that functionality. I think browsing wise, I really don't care between Google and Firefox. Plugin wise, they're comparable unless we get to uBlock Origin, right? But the reason I stick with Google Chrome is because it can tie it back to a Google account.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, so I'm looking at my Firefox browser right now, and, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different tabs that I've pinned that are logged into different Google accounts. Right.
Okay.
So, but I don't use I don't really use bookmarks or, anything. So I don't sync any of that stuff. So I'm not,
because he deletes it after a week.
yeah, that's right.
Delete all your bookmarks.
That's funny. Yeah.
I do use a bookmarking service to manage my bookmarks largely. I don't usually use Chrome's bookmarking facility.
Right. But, so
Right.
I really haven't had any issues. There are very specific, so this podcast being one where you have to use
You have to use Chrome.
You have to
Yep.
use Chrome. So, but other than that, I haven't had any issues moving back over to Firefox. But uBlock Origin was the the catalyst for that move.
Now I'm reading this article, and is the only reason uBlock Origin's been quote delisted is because they're using Manifest v2.
So I'm not sure.
And
I forget the technical reasons. Yeah, there's technical reasons behind it.
deprecate Manifest v2 in favor of the v3 framework. So I'm like, why don't they just port uBlock Origin to v3? I don't know what's involved in any of that. So, Sam?
No, they did. They ported it to V3, but they had to greatly limited features. And then they got in a big argument with the developers, and I think just rage quit the whole thing. But the V3 is much more limited in what you're allowed to do. That's why a lot of people say the whole point of V3 is to prevent ad blocking. Anyway,
Oh, gotcha.
Oh, I see. I remember. I think there was a Security Now episode that went into all the like nitty gritty details, and then I kind of tuned it out because I'm like, oh my god, it's a lot of really specific like browser kind of stuff, which I probably shouldn't have. Probably should have paid more attention to that. But
Well, so I assume most of your
Well-
audience knows what uBlock Origin is, but
Yeah.
if you don't, it is hands down the best ad blocker that you can install on a browser. It works in things like YouTube and like it'll
Yeah.
skip over ads, and it's just it not having it greatly changes my browsing experience. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, it blocks all kinds of stuff. You're right. And I tend to double stack. So in my Chrome instances, now you got me wanting to move back to Firefox. I tend to stack at least 3 different ad blocking security based plugins because I've got an RSS aggregator that I'm clicking on a lot of links to various different stories. And I'm like, I want as much protection as possible because I'm aggregating news from all different kinds of sources and I can't validate all of those sources, right? To basically prep for the show. Like, I just can't. I got to rely on plugins to help like weed out. And sometimes like the site will be like, the plugin will be like, I don't think you should visit this site. I'm like, cool, good to know. Not going to do it. Right.
Yep.
And this could be a game changer for me as well, Bill.
Well, I just use Brave, and I don't need to add on at all. It blocks most of the ads, and
It
it gives me
does.
complete
Brave is pretty
control
good.
over the ads and
Yep.
cookies.
Yeah, I test drove Brave 2 or 3 years ago. I still maintain it on my systems. So maybe I need to go back to it soon.
Yeah, there was a reason that I left Brave. I loved Brave. I absolutely
Yeah.
was like I should have been a Brave evangelist because but there was something that happened and I don't recall, but it was around that same
Some
time.
sites didn't load great. I found that amongst all the browsers out there, like Brave would just puke on itself on certain sites, and I
Well,
was
it was
like,
kind
I
of
can't
that
have that.
same timeline, like 2 or 3 years ago. And maybe so Sam,
Maybe it
I'm
got
not.
better.
Yeah, I'm not talking any crap on it at all. Like I loved it, but there was
I like
something
I like the Tor integration in Brave. I don't have to have
Yeah.
a Tor client or browser. Like, it has that built in. That's one of the things I
Yeah.
love about Brave.
Yeah.
That was why I actually installed Brave recently, is because there was a
it's a
Tor
great
site.
Tor browser.
There was a
It's
Tor
great.
site I needed to
Yeah.
access, and I'm like,
I already have Brave installed. Great. It's
actually,
better
that
than
was
a
the
lot.
reason. That was the reason why I installed it.
It's better than installing a lot of shady, seedy Tor clients that are out there.
Yep.
Tor browser. Tor browser. The reason I did is because the Tor browser, we would cover how it would have vulnerabilities all the time.
Yep, exactly.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that's the browsing moment.
All
this week.
browsers are crap,
Yep,
Yep.
pretty much what it comes down to.
Yep.
but that's all we use in computers now. We buy computers to run
A browser.
browser.
Yep. Maybe we should just make the browser the operating system. Wait, that's
Yeah.
a Chromebook.
Well, I'd like to hear about Bill's story about Zendesk. This is pretty incredible.
Yeah, this one is really, really good. So, if you go and so that is my story number 5. So I got this link off of Hacker News, and so there is a 15-year-old that found a bug, and he tried to submit it. He tried to submit it to Zendesk, and essentially what he was able to do was to take over all Zendesk accounts. And when he first started submitting, found the bug. So the link takes you to a gist that he wrote that kind of walks you through everything that he went through, finding the bug, trying to disclose the bug, and everything, just all from there. But this really goes to chaining, that problem that we have, like we keep coming back to chaining vulnerabilities and chain. And so what he ran into when he first tried to disclose this bug to Zendesk was that, I'm sorry, this is an email spamming type or email spoofing. Thank you. Attack, and that per our rules on our bug bounty, that's not accepted. So he just kept pushing on that, and it ended up taking over Slack accounts. It's a great read. It goes through like just the hacker mindset. I love that this was a youngster that wasn't
Didn't give
bullied.
up.
Yeah, he didn't give up, and he wasn't bullied, and he knew that he had something, or they had something. I don't know if it's he or she. So they had something, and they just didn't stop. And it's a great read. And then in the end, ended up being a $50,000 bug bounty. So congrats, love it. Very proud
Congrats!
of
You can almost get 1 year of a college tuition with 50 grand.
Hey,
Yeah,
well,
that's right.
and I love in
10
the
years
write up
ago.
it says out of scope, so
Yeah,
no
right.
attacker ever.
Right.
I love that.
I had a bunch of stories in there. Larry, I wanted to. You want to talk about SBOMs?
Yeah, sure.
So this is my overrated. SBOMs are overrated.
Yep.
This is Josh Bresser's that wrote this article.
Yeah.
Who
I
frequently
read-
fills in. Did you read this article?
I read this article after you sent it because I've been kind of crazy this week. But I read this article, and quite honestly, I found it really hard to follow.
Me too. Okay, so you weren't alone.
Yep.
You're not alone.
So not
He was
only,
he was kind of. I love Josh. Again,
Yeah.
he's a regular contributor to the show.
Yep.
Not you, Josh Marpet, but Josh Bresser's, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's okay. You don't have to love me.
No, we love you too. We love you too.
I love you, Schmear.
We love your schmear. The whole thing. We were talking about bagels earlier.
Yep.
Off air. But so I had to like pick out in this article like what I think Bresser's was getting at, right? And he says the thing is, SBOMs aren't something that should exist by themselves. They are a tool, part of a larger system. The two SBOM formats, they get much of the attention and complaints are SPDX and CycloneDX, but those are just standards. They are formal definitions of SBOMs that tell us what sort of information they should contain, but it's foolish to use such a narrow definition by itself. Remember, it's just a tool. So what I think Josh is saying is that SBOMs are just data, and you have to do something with it. Important
You're right.
that they have data, and they have assigned requirements and formats, SPDX, CycloneDX,
Yep.
but they're just data. And I think comparing it to something else is the most useful part, not so much the data itself, because we can get a manifest of what's installed on a system from a number of different ways. He alludes to that in the article.
This is true, but I think this is really where SPDX or CycloneDX come in handy. Well, he says it's just a standard for an SBOM, and you can get this data from other places. The problem is that none of that other data in other places have any standardization.
Right.
So if you're claiming that you need to do something with it,
you can't
it's
because I agree.
Right.
I agree.
So it's not,
I agree with your assessment. Yep.
So
The three SBOM standards are SWID tags, SPDX, and CycloneDX.
yeah,
CycloneDX integrates much more readily with many more things.
Yep.
SPDX has a full ISO standard.
Yep. And SWID, nobody
cares about SWID anymore. Let's be honest.
Yep. So,
but here's the thing:
there was,
if I get a
ahead.
thing, and it comes with an SBOM, I don't implicitly trust that SBOM. I want to go create my own SBOM, and then I want to compare them.
Trust it.
I can help you.
But
with
we
that.
need a standard to be able to compare against. Larry, back to your point,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If it's SPDX, I want to generate an SPDX SBOM
Yep.
off my own, and then compare it to what the vendor shipped it with, and go, does it match?
Yeah. Now, arguably,
There was actually a company that did that for a while, and they found out that vendors lie. I know, crazy people lie.
Crazy,
I
right?
know.
Crazy how we didn't just implicitly trust what vendors ship
quite
us.
honestly, that in some of those cases where the vendors may be lying, they may not be lying intentionally. That
Yeah.
they created their SBOM from some spreadsheet that they then converted to the appropriate.
Oh, it wasn't
standard.
part of their
So
CI/CD pipeline,
right?
yeah.
And it wasn't automated, and it wasn't any of that. type of stuff.
Even when it's automated, let's be clear, even when it's automated and not spreadsheet based, if you have this library and it's encapsulated in three other three layers of libraries above it or whatever, you just may not go down that far.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's really tough.
I know. Tell me. This is my life. But yeah, I
Oh,
think
you really? I didn't. Wait, is that what you're doing over there? I didn't realize that.
yeah.
Oh man, do you want to talk? I
yeah.
spent 3 months screaming about canonicalization and serialization with SPDX.
I'd love to.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Anytime.
We generate SBOMs for firmware as well in
Yep.
our product as well, Eclipsium. So yeah,
You
we're-
lying sack of no. Just kidding.
So admittedly, I love some of the comments towards the end where it was like, hey, when you were saying, hey, well, we've got all these software identification systems that can output a list of software, but it's an SBOM because it's the list of software, and but it's not an SBOM because it doesn't meet the
Adhere
formats
to a
or cycle,
standard.
right? And it really then becomes hard to use.
Mm.
And I think the one he says is like, at this point, a cynical of us would proclaim, while this is technically correct, you can only call it an SBOM if it's generated in the correct region of France. Otherwise, it's just a sparkling list.
Oh, that's brilliant.
That's
Yes,
brilliant.
and he's
love it.
right.
I
He's
love
right.
it.
With
But he
all
also
the- with
tries
all,
to-
all
It's a
these other
sparkling-
tools are just sparkling lists because
He
they
tried
weren't
to work in the McRib to the whole thing. too.
Yeah,
I didn't get the McRib.
I don't.
I struggled to draw the parallels between
and this is
SBOMs
he
and
like
the
he was
McRib.
starting to lose like.
Also, have you ever had a
Ah.
McRib? It's not great.
No,
They're not good.
No,
no.
they're not. They're not
I mean,
great.
what animal does the McRib come from?
Hopefully a pig, which is where
I mean, what part of the animal do they harvest it from?
the ribs.
Where the-
we hope,
But there's no bones in it, and it's shaped
Hopefully-
like ribs.
but hopefully they barbecued ribs and went through the 6-hour long process that one goes through for smoking ribs, and then gets them tender enough where you can just remove the bone. No,
but the
McDonald's-
shape of the bone is still there.
McDonald's doesn't do that. No, okay,
Yeah.
that's how
No,
I-
they go through a 60-hour process where they cook it so much that the bones become McRib.
Oh, dude, I don't want to hear
ew.
that. That's nasty.
I don't know. I
I've
have no
I've
idea.
watched
Okay.
the videos where people make their own McRibs, and that's what you want to do. Make your own McRib.
Look.
Make
If-
your own
no,
S-bomb.
no.
Make your own
Don't-
McRib.
Don't make McRibs. Don't make McRibs. Make real food. And when
Yes.
you do an SBOM, do it right. List every chunk of software in your damn thing, and then list it out. And if you can't
And make
list
sure
it
you
out
have
in
pickles
the
on it.
proper format,
Pickles are important.
And I'd argue, Josh, like list every piece of software, like that becomes some of the hard part, right? Like that's
that
where
is
you
the
need
hard
that's
part.
where you need
It's
to
a
do some
fucking
automation.
nightmare.
Yep.
It's a fucking okay. Look. Even if you take out the malicious hiding of software, okay. I took 3 libraries, created my own library, dropped them in it just so I didn't have to list those 3 in the SBOM. Even if you take out the malicious aspect, you literally have people that glue code, that are gluing code on glue code,
Mhm.
that are gluing Legos on glue code, and then they call it one library and 17 libraries together. And it's not that they did this maliciously. It's just that that's how we've taught people how to build friggin' software for the last, 5 or 10 years?
Yep.
It's what the
Right?
it's what the
Sam's
LLM
giggling.
told me.
I swear to God, Sam is giggling. Sam, why are you giggling?
Oh, I'm teaching programming classes now. And that's how it ends up. It's the same reason cities end up this way. You build a house, then you build a street, then you build another house, then you sort of cram stuff in. It's kind of natural.
Mm.
Human
Well,
nature.
that's-
Yeah. Have you ever been to Boston? Good
Oh,
Lord,
yes.
that's-
My dad
That
told
is-
me when I was a kid, you can never get anywhere in Boston without going the wrong way down a one-way street. And I
Yes.
found out that is
True.
true. Yeah.
It's absolutely true. Larry and I both have spent a lot of time in Boston, and it's one of those early cities that were built, and it's not a grid.
Well,
New York City, grid.
Well, you
Boston?
know why, and
Not a grid.
We're totally getting down the rabbit
Way
hole
off,
here,
way
but you know why Boston is like that?
Because it was one of the
Because
early
they
They put
Well,
cities.
well,
cow paths and mung them
because-
together.
Because Boston Common was where all of the livestock in the early days of the city would go to graze. So, like at the end at night, you'd go and get your cow, and you'd
Make a
bring it home.
McRib.
And you
make a McRib.
You'd bring it home, you put it in your barn, and in the morning you'd send the
Send the
cow
cow
off.
out,
And
yeah.
it was the shortest path from your house to Boston
to
Common.
the common.
So I was
Which-
right.
that-
It's a
which
fucking
got-
bunch of cow paths.
Exactly. So it got worn, and then that became where other people walked to get somewhere, and they'd go to Boston Common, and then they'd go back from Boston Common.
That
So
makes sense.
it's all just wherever the cow wanted to fucking walk.
Right.
It is
That makes-
literally cow paths that got turned
Having
into road.
driven in Boston a lot, that makes total
It is
sense.
exact.
So this is like the story of, do you know why railroad tracks in the U.S. are this width?
Yeah, with the 2 horses' asses.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Hmm.
And Paul, do you understand that one, or do you
I
sit
know, I
there
do.
going, like, what the hell are they talking about?
No, I get it. There's
Okay,
also
yeah,
two
it's a
horses'
Roman war
asses sitting at
chariot.
this table right now too. So
There
the,
is.
the analogy
and
holds up.
And that's about how wide a train track is. So
Yeah,
you're right.
That's very good.
A Roman war chariot is why our railroad tracks are that wide. It's crazy.
Yep.
But no, in all seriousness, SBOMs are a problem and a wonderment. And we need to be more flexible with them. There are standards for them, but they need to be a little more flexible. But the good thing is that there are certain concepts in there that are the minimum required information.
Yeah.
Which means anything else is extra. So as long as you have the minimum required, which is a very, very small list of things.
Yep.
Okay. And that's called out for SPDX. I don't know if Cyclone DX has that as a minimum required.
Yes,
It does?
I
Okay,
do
good.
believe there is minimum requirements for C.
But if
Larry,
you meet the minimum requirements, anything else is just extra and it's fine.
Yeah, anything else is just sparkling SBOMs.
No,
I want to talk about Larry's story number 2. You seemed like this really grinded your gears.
My story number 2, which was my story number
RF
2.
Swift.
Oh, it wasn't so much that it ground my gears. Like this was pretty
like spotty
cool.
Apple support is what I kind of read. Like it doesn't.
It was like that was just the auto generated notes.
Oh, okay.
Like so, we're going into Sec 617 update season. We just finished the IoT class update season, and in fact, I just finished the recording for that for on demand, as in this afternoon. So now we're moving into updating 617, and we've been looking at like what are the improvements in some of the tools, and like where you've been using this tool, and what's the next best tool? Because this tool hasn't been updated in 7 years; it still works, but is there something that goes and adds above and beyond to
RF
that
Swift
tool
looks
is?
like something you need to include.
RF Swift looks interesting,
Promising.
specifically in that it has a whole bunch of tools for both x86 and ARM64, and gives you the ability to effectively Dockerize all of the Wi-Fi tools that you might want. And it's not just Wi-Fi, it's like Bluetooth and software-defined radio. And
reminds me of the other project I sent to you that gave you like an API interface to all of the RF protocols. Yeah, remember that?
WAD.
Yeah.
I've been playing with WAD quite a bit. And in fact, it's included in the 556 course because we talk about the LoRa implementation in WAD. It's not quite there yet, but it's an up-and-coming type of thing that we need to start investigating because LoRa is very much, and attacking LoRa is an up-and-coming type of thing.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, LoRa's out there. LoRa exists. It is.
But it's so minimal in use, isn't it? I mean,
when was the last time you bought an Amazon Echo device?
I don't.
Okay. Well, I picked up an Amazon Echo device because I needed another one in my workshop because I bought some Amazon Echo controlled lights for my workshop. And now I can play music out there and all that type of stuff. So I picked up an Amazon Echo about 2 weeks ago, and you plug it in and it asks you if you want to turn on Amazon Sidewalk.
Is Amazon Sidewalk?
Amazon Sidewalk is LoRa.
Okay, well, what does it do?
It's like a mesh network.
It's a mesh network, and it can help support some of the notifications for their deliveries, and it can be used for all other sorts of IoT type devices. It effectively becomes LoRa to Internet Gateway.
Amazon's mesh.
Yeah, it's Amazon's mesh, and it's. I mean, I haven't dug into it entirety, but like that is arguably one of the biggest installations of LoRa, is Amazon Sidewalk, and then of course there's Meshtastic for doing your off-grid communications and all that messaging stuff, which is super fun. But yeah, so RF Swift is effectively containerization for a whole bunch of RF stuff for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and ham radio. And so let's see, it does some software-defined radio, RFID, automotive, reversing, telecom, let's see, or RTL SDR stuff, HackRF, AirSpy, Lime SDR, Signal Hound. I want to say there's some other Wi-Fi, some RFID for the Proxmark, libNFC, SigDigger, bunch
It's like trying to be your all-encompassing interface to all of your RF hacking.
I mean, it's not even so much that it's an interface. It's more that, hey, I need to run this tool, and I don't want to spend the next 30 hours configuring this. Oh, look, Docker container.
Yeah,
and it
I mean,
works.
that's smart. Honestly, that's not stupid.
Right.
Yep. And admittedly, it goes a little bit above beyond some of the Wi-Fi stuff in that they've got a whole bunch of CAN bus utilities. And they've got some firmware emulation, such as Unicorn, Binwalk, now also Binwalk V3.
Ooh.
Do you want to segue into
All sorts of
from
fun
that
stuff.
into the Internet Archive while I take a break? Be right back.
Oh, you
I gotta
meant
pee.
pee? What?
That was
Or
an
more importantly,
emergency.
we could
Hey,
go
I've
into
got a
another
quick-
story.
I got a quick announcement real quick.
Yeah, Josh.
So B-Sides Delaware is November 8th and 9th. It's my conference, so I'm sort of totally hijacking the show for a minute. But we want people there. We're having it at a university. It's a dry conference. Afterwards is not dry, but during it's a university. So we're trying to get the college students. We're trying to get the recruiters there. We're trying to get a lot of different people there. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're having talks about quantum decryption. We're having talks about SBOMs actually and risk quantification and all sorts of stuff. Okay.
Very cool.
And we're looking for sponsors, and we always want more speakers. So please come on down.
Awesome.
So B-Sides Delaware, DelawareSpelledOut.com.
Yep. And when is the conference, Josh?
November 8th and 9th. It's a Friday and a Saturday. So if you can only get there on a weekend, cool. If you can only get there on a weekday, cool. If you can get there both, coolest yet.
Very nice. Hey,
And it's like $5 or $10. I think it's $10. Forgive me. I can't remember.
I didn't necessarily want to talk about Internet Archive getting hacked because there was one that other interested me
Go for it.
from Sam. And regardless of any of the political stuff that Sam had a story about the Trump campaign arms up with unhackable phones from Green Hills.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
joking,
that caught my
right?
attention.
Nope.
So when I first see something claimed to be unhackable, I think maybe these guys are idiots. But Green Hill, I know them; they're not idiots. So I researched it and I looked into the IDE from Green Hill. I've heard of Green Hill for years, used for fighter jets, and their IDE.
The B-2, the F-22, and F-35.
Yeah, and I haven't heard of those getting hacked all the time. So I get the impression these guys know what they're doing. I know I never can get my hands on it. It doesn't have free versions or anything. It's all proprietary and classified, I think. The IDE, I found the page describing it, and it's very impressive. Their development environment lets you view the history, lets you view how long it's taking to execute each bit so you can make real-time code. It automatically reviews source code when it's compiled, and it automatically checks for error conditions while it's running to check memory corruption stuff. This sounds like a fantastic environment, and they claim that all their code is analyzed by multiple developers and multiple engines, so they really claim there are many less bugs in their code. I don't think they claim it's
and their
unhackable.
pen testers, right? And their pen testers are complaining because they can't find enough bugs.
Well, that's what should happen, right? I mean,
Right. Now, and the one that really grabbed me is that
which one are we talking about?
we're talking about
these are
the
the unhackable
Green Hills
phones.
on the unhackable
the
phone.
unhackable phones. Yeah.
Sorry, we went from
No,
the
it's
Internet
fine.
Archive and didn't go there. We went another
That's
direction
fine.
instead.
Yeah.
But the one that I found that was really interesting from this Register article was that it says Green Hills software CEO Dan O'Dowd told the Register that an entire operating system on the devices for these phones operates around 10,000 lines of code.
Yeah,
Me
I'm
too,
looking at
Larry.
that. That's
That
crazy.
was my highlight of that article too.
What?
10,000
That's
lines
extremely low.
for the
What?
whole
Like, what does this
OS?
phone actually do?
Yeah.
I
'cause,
bet I bet it makes phone calls.
Right.
the,
Yeah.
the,
That's
the
not
podcast
stupid,
tracking
actually, yeah.
software that we created called PPWorks was about 10,000 lines of code.
And that was when it started, and with like very few features.
No, it was somewhat mature. I mean, it's probably more than that now, but
So just to be clear, Android has 88 million lines of code right now.
Wow.
I mean, the kernel itself. How many lines of code are in the Linux kernel? Like core
I don't
Linux
know.
Oh,
kernel.
Jesus.
But arguably, I mean, their claim here is that the entire operating system runs on 10,000 lines of code.
Well, so I don't even care if it's only 10,000 lines and it's a completely unhackable phone. All telcos are hacked, right?
Yep.
Right, Josh?
So
the
yes,
Linux
I sent you a link.
Linux 5.11 2020 release of the Linux kernel had about 30 million lines of code.
So I mean,
I
like,
don't know, but again, like,
Yeah.
is that the drivers? Is that everything? Is that like what options is that? Blah blah blah.
Yeah, it'd be
whatever.
really
but still,
interesting
30
if we
million
could
is a
get-
lot.
it'd be interesting if we could get more information about this phone, right? So, like, I do think the question that I don't know who asked it, but
Yeah, I wish
what
I
does
could
it
get a
do?
free.
Does it
Oh.
only make phone calls?
Right.
Right. And so
So-
then you start, then, like, and I know where you guys touched a button with me earlier, but But then you do start worrying, okay, if it is going over the telco networks, is it only voice? Is it secure voice? Right? Can you
Right.
SMS?
Yep.
What are those capabilities?
It could just be a hypervisor. Because it could just be a massive sandbox for every application. So they could have full smartphone functionality, but just being able to reduce the blast radius, being able to keep every single application actually sandboxed.
Yeah, but that's
I'm
probably 500,000 to 1 million lines of code right there just to get that.
Yeah, you're
And
probably
and,
right.
and arguably the drive for having this secure phone, and I suspect that they want to imply that it does more than a phone, is because they are having the quote unhackable phones and computers to avoid attempts of earlier incidents from pro-Iranian attackers who managed to steal emails and other data from the crew. So like,
let me
don't want to have the
ju-
phone steal our emails, but does it even do email? Like, can it do
Yeah.
email in 10,000 lines of code?
So there is another
Just-
line in there, Larry. So it says the software shop claims it is immune to zero-click commercial surveillance tools such as NSO groups, Pegasus code. Maybe because there is
There's no clicking.
click.
You're not allowed to click.
Yeah.
It can't
I've
click what
got a
doesn't exist.
smartphone.
Right,
What
yeah.
does it do? It makes
Yeah.
calls.
It's
Yeah.
one of those Nokia, like
Yeah.
like what are those?
The
Or if you
candy
get
bar
if you
phones,
get
the
a
candy bar
URL
phones.
if you get a URL in a text message, you don't click it. You get to copy and paste it. Therefore, zero-click exploits don't work because you have
Right.
to copy and paste the
So
link.
I will point out that the original Linux kernel in 1991 had 8,200 lines of code.
Yeah, but that's
So they're using a 1981 Linux kernel to run this phone.
That would be 1991.
Oh, sorry,
81 would be
91.
really
Maybe
impressive. That was 10 years
1991.
before there was
My bad.
Linux.
My bad.
I
That's
mean,
okay.
maybe like a real-time operating system perhaps has a lot less lines of code.
All right, I'm going to go out on a limb. Let's
Anyway.
just give these all to every political everybody. Like, right? I mean, like, why not?
Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
Black Phone actually made their code open source, except
did.
for one thing. You couldn't use it commercially.
Hmm.
And so you can have a secure phone. These days it's old. But
Yeah.
I mean, and then there's Lineage and what are the other ones?
So is Black
ah.
Phone still around? So that that
No.
was
No.
As far as I know, no. Silent Circle's still around, but I don't think Black Phone is.
I think
Drake one
Silent
was the
Circle made a
driver there.
pivot. They made a pivot in something different, right? They secure Android now or something like that.
Green Hill advertises that they teamed up with HP, and this thing is a full Android phone.
wow.
So they paired Android down to 10,000 lines of code.
Or maybe they only added 10,000 lines. That's right. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
The details are not clear, and I don't think any
Right.
of it's open source, so I can't really examine it
You
or
can't
test it.
validate it, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I wonder if that 10,000 claim is misleading, and some important part of it is 10,000, and he's not mentioning, the 50 million other stuff that doesn't count.
Right.
I mean, conceivably, a driver for the phone could have 10,000 lines of code.
Yeah.
So Silent Circle now uses Signal as its back end to do an enterprise communications platform.
Yeah, I was going to say they pivoted. Lineage is the other one, and I can't think of the other Android derivatives off the top of my head. There is another one.
I know. I don't remember it either.
I don't remember either. It'll come to me at some point.
But 10,000 lines of code, I can't conceive of that
Yeah.
being an actual phone.
I mean, and
Other
at
than
10,000
maybe-
lines of code, I can see where their pen testers are frustrated because they run out of bugs.
Right.
Yeah, totally. Shit.
I could manually review 10,000 lines of source code
Yeah.
in my sleep and not need their nice compiler to do all this stuff. Like,
Although apparently it's a really nice IDE. So
agreed. All right, moving on.
Air gap devices. I think Larry and I both had this story. This was what do they call the campaign? It was
Golden Jackal.
Yeah, Golden Jackal, and Golden Jackal has Golden Dealer, Golden Howl,
Golden
Jackal
Robo.
Steel, a Jackal Worm. It's all golden and jackals. Golden Ace, Golden USB Go.
Golden USB copy.
It's golden and it's a jackal, and it's
Does it? But the question is, when it cleans up after itself, is it called Golden Shower?
it could be
Holy shit.
at least
If it's not,
Anyway.
it better be.
It should be.
Right.
It should be.
Yeah.
So when I read the headline reads, 2 never before seen tools from the same group infect air gap devices. I was like, oh,
Wait, say that again.
2 never before seen tools from the same group infect air gap devices. I read the headline and I was like, this is going to be epic. This is going to be the actual implementation of flashing LEDs on, the computer to do covert channels. This is going to be changing the fan speeds, right? This is going to be emitting sounds that the human ear can't hear,
And you wonder why
but
the dogs are
computers
going
can
nuts.
hear,
Yeah.
right? And this is how they're exfiltrating data across the air gap network. And I read the article and there's none of that. And I'm like, oh, it's USB devices that when plugged into an air gap network, you plug in the USB device, it pulls in all the data, and then it stores it smartly on that USB device. And then when they take that USB device and they go plug it into a non-air gap device, it exfiltrates the data. Now, I don't want to take anything away from if you dig into the details in the article, like, yeah, it's like really cool the way they implemented that. But keep in mind, this is basically I dropped a bunch of USB devices in the parking lot style attack. And this is attacking air gap networks a la Stuxnet, right? And several other attacks via basically USB devices, which wasn't as exciting to me as, changing the fan speeds and exfiltrating data that way,
Ooh,
which
look,
I get
this
it is really
USB
slow.
says bikini pics. Let me go plug it into my air gap computer. Right?
Yeah.
And that's how you get classified porn.
Well, I think I think
that's
they
how
were,
you- and
but
that's how you
hold on,
get in
though.
tons.
I think they were successful. So as much as we're gonna, can I get an S cube? Well, as much as we're gonna knock their techniques, I think they were successful, right? Because when you air gap a computer, you still need to get data on it, and you still need to get data off of it, and it's air quotes air gapped, but that means there's still a mechanism there for getting stuff on and off this computer, getting data on and off the computer. And
Sounds like
that's
there's more to
USB
that
devices.
story, right? So that their purchase of USB drives was intercepted, and replaced
Supply
or
chain.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right, Bill. The more interesting part of the story is how they got the USB devices in play so that they were getting plugged into the air gap network. Not so much the technology behind it, which is, I mean, shit that we've been talking about for decades now. God, we're old.
It's just you.
Nope, it's all
Well,
of you.
Paul, I'd like to hear about your number 7.
Because all of you were around when we first started talking about USB attacks. That
Yep.
makes us all old.
So much so that they had to disable auto run. Oh, sorry, Sam.
Sam? Oh, sorry, you're breaking up there,
Hey,
Sam.
Paul, I'd like to hear about your number 7. That's an interesting attack. Yeah,
No, you're
something
still
wrong with my
breaking up.
internet.
You're still breaking up.
Plug that USB drive in.
Fix that shit. All right, you're back now.
Okay, I'd like to hear about your number 7. That was fun.
Oh,
Me
the
too. That's where I was going to take it too, Sam. Man, we're on the same
EDR
page.
silencer
Yeah.
disrupting EDR, because I'm all about the EDR, which was EDR silencer was a red team tool that now malicious threat actors are using to conceal activity. I don't know. Did any of you guys ever use EDR silencer? I meant to go look this up in more detail.
So I
And I
haven't
didn't.
used it. I haven't used it in practice, but I have it in my toolkit. And so essentially, what it does is it uses the Windows the Windows firewall capability to block the callbacks from the EDR agent back to home server, right?
Okay.
And
It's a Windows filtering platform APIs.
well,
Or-
so like I'm not exactly sure what I don't want to Sam, you might know, but I
No, that's it.
looked into
It
that.
uses WFP
Yeah.
to stop the logs from being sent to the log aggregator. It's pretty brilliant. It stops the service from working without interfering with it directly.
Hey, the service is still running. Everything's good, but
Yep.
hey, we lost contact with the server.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, it's brilliant, right? So it's brilliant, right? So, so I didn't read into the story about how the APTs are integrating, but it does seem like a something that it's it's a good choke point when you start thinking about EDRs, especially EDRs that make their decision about what actions are going to be taken after it's been analyzed in the cloud, right?
Mhm.
And it would
Yeah,
apply to you, it would apply to your threat hunting and detection mechanisms that are probably running on a central server. It's hitting a weak point that I hadn't thought of.
Well, and it will also, it will stop any quarantine, type requests or anything that would be sent from the EDR command and control, right? It's brutal.
it made me think of John Strand's, what did he call it? Cash cow tipping,
Yes.
where he would just go, look, this is how easy it is to get past
That was
AV
a while
and
ago.
EDR. And I don't know if he still does that. I've been meaning to call him and ask him what the state of that today, because we see so many techniques every single week. We cover them here on the show about how to get around EDR. Every single week, I see some kind of new technique for privilege escalation, for EDR bypass, for all of that stuff. And the threat actors today have so much at their disposal for bypassing, for blinding, for disabling endpoint protection mechanisms that we have on our Windows systems today, that they don't have to really get fancy. I mean, we talked about that with John Hammond, right? They don't have to be fancy. They don't have to be novel, unique, or innovative. They're just like, oh, hey, look, in this case, there's a red team tool that does this. I'm just going to repurpose that and I can get around EDR, right? I don't even need to bring my own vulnerable driver. I don't need to bring my own driver that I'm utilizing its functionality. I don't need to go to the bootloader. I don't need to go to UEFI. God forbid I don't need to go down to the BMC or Intel ME level or any of those lower levels. I don't have to, because I have all these other tools at my disposal to be able to bypass EDR. And I hope that gets better. I really do. I think there's looking at it was MDSec that created the tool. It was inspired by the closed source tool Fireblock. Sorry, excuse me, from MDSec Nighthawk. And I want to say I've used Nighthawk in one of my investigations. No, that's a command and control framework. Nighthawk is the command and control framework.
And name often given to high-end routers.
That too, from Netgear.
Yep.
Yeah, Nighthawk is the C2 framework. I was thinking of a different tool for forensics, but in any case, they're like, oh, I can just take a off the shelf tool and modify it for my own purpose, and therefore I can bypass EDR. We need to raise the bar, right, on how to block that. And I think we're going through the same things in the Linux kernel as well, to a much different degree. I had a couple of stories about, if you think it's easy on Windows, good Lord, is it easy on Linux? And I just want to throw this out there to like the Linux zealots of the world that are like, I run Linux, therefore I'm way more secure. No, you're not. Like, in fact, I think you're less secure than Windows, quite frankly, because of the openness of the Linux ecosystem. You're at a significant disadvantage from a sheer ecosystem perspective, right? Like the tools that you're given, attackers are just going to have way more of a field day than they are in Windows. They're not attacking Linux systems at the same rate they're attacking Windows systems, because the stat that I heard from 2021 was Microsoft had like 73% market share. Then there was like 15% that was Apple. Linux on the desktop was 3% in 2021. It's probably still the same today.
It's not the year of the Linux desktop?
No, it's not in terms of sheer numbers, right? So when we look at what attackers could do on Linux, they're doing kind of like the bare minimum. They're living off the land and being wildly successful, but they're largely like not worried about attacking an average desktop that has a user around it, because that's like low market share. They're attacking servers and IoT devices that are running Linux that don't have an active user on them. Therefore, they can be like whatever. But there are some new and novel techniques on the Linux front. One is, I want to talk about not my story number 16, bypassing no exec and executing binaries in memory. So if you wanted to build a completely fileless malware for Linux, this is a great start, right?
Ooh.
And also, there's not as many protections that exist on Windows systems and EDRs that people are running for Linux as a comparison. So if you've got mounted a file system, for example, that is non-executable, so like a lot of higher security Linux installations, if I were to really be paranoid, I would mount /TMP as non-executable, right? It should just be a place for you to store files. It shouldn't be a place for you to execute code, but it should be world writable, right? And that's just one example. There's a lot of like really heavy Linux stuff in this article. The TLDR is they've come up with a way to execute a binary in a Linux system that when execution is not allowed by all the different Linux primitives that allow you to restrict execution, by only using bash and making a syscall from within bash. So you're injecting into bash to make a system call to execute code that can all happen in memory through a whole bunch of different Linux primitives such as ptrace, memory mapping, all kinds of fun stuff that are happening in there. I'm not sure any of this is entirely new on its own. What I think is new is kind of the conglomeration of all these techniques to go, I'm going to execute code completely in memory and not touch the file system at all in a Linux system. I think it's great. I think that threat actors are probably going to look at this and at some point go, oh, this is just going to be how we execute code on Linux systems moving forward. Whereas today it's kind of dodgy. Like the stuff I've seen on Linux is like, we could detect this with very kind of primitive stuff on Linux systems until they adopt this, in which case we're going to have to get a lot smarter. So this came from
the hacker's choice.
The hacker's choice.
Yeah,
hacker's choice is still alive and well, dude.
They're crushing it. They're back. They've been releasing tools, and when I saw this come across my Twitter feed as well, and heck yeah, I give it out to the crew there. They're crushing it.
They're still kicking ass and taking names, man. And I knew THC from THC Hydra, right?
Yeah.
Password brute forcer. That was the tool. I mean, it still works today, right? It is actively maintained. They've been around since the beginning of time, I feel like.
Yeah, I think so too.
They also made a whole bunch of really good IP version 6 attacks. I used them for years.
Mm-hmm. So cool stuff happening there. The other Linux one was an Ubuntu one. What was the one in Ubuntu?
It was your 14. Your story
Thank
number
you.
14.
Auth-D basically allows you to authenticate to systems based on like cloud ID permissions, but the user ID was not necessarily unique. So in other words, if Auth-D was going, I've got a username Paul, I could create a username Paul, and because of that user ID collision, I can also log into the system, which is great. This I think was specific to Ubuntu in the way that it implements it, but yeah, that was pretty significant as well. Anyway, where are we going next?
Oh, there's so many good stories.
There's so much. Oh, let's talk about, can you get root with a cigarette lighter? I love this.
Wait, what? Which one was that?
My story number 11. You can totally get root with a cigarette lighter. So David Buchanan.
Well, the article title is, can you get root with only a cigarette lighter?
Yeah, but it is misleading. Totally misleading. Because I read that title too, and I was like, what are you talking about with only a cigarette lighter? Turns out you need a cigarette lighter plus a chip shouter plus some cables that act as an antenna. And the cigarette lighter is basically inducing
it's EMP.
It's triggering the EMP, right?
Yeah. Well, the piezoelectric portion of the barbecue lighter, the part that makes the little spark, is the part that is generating the EMP.
Yep.
That is effectively flipping bits to redirect.
It's triggering the fault injection into RAM. So he attached the chip shouter to the RAM chip, right?
I didn't see any mention of the chip shouter in here.
says he used a chip shatter to zap specific areas of the Pi's PCB, causing glitches in the DRAM controller and flipping bits in nearby rows. And in the actual article, he shows something like attached to the RAM chip.
I don't see the chip. I don't see chip shatter in this article at all.
Hmm.
I literally did a command F and looked for chip and shatter, and it shows up nowhere in this article.
I thought he used a chip shatter for this. No?
Nope. But that would be outside the rules of only a cigarette lighter. I mean, maybe.
He already soldered a wire to his RAM, so it's pretty close to outside the rules there.
Yeah.
But
now, don't get me wrong. I think the soldering the wire to the RAM and having the speed hole made it so that it was more effective, just as a matter of practice and practicality and so forth. Because the EMP was not very far, is not terribly effective because it's a freaking lighter, man. No.
Mm. Yeah, I don't see he's using chip shatter either.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, chip shatter and those series of tools is very similar to the EMP style attacks that are effectively being delivered by the lighter.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Was it just a lead connected to the RAM, and the lighter was injecting basically the spark?
Yep, and he wasn't even necessarily injecting a spark.
Well, not a spark. He's injecting a piece of It's like injecting raw electricity.
Correct.
Yeah. So he wasn't injecting any electricity. He was merely lighting the lighter near the wire, that the energy, the electromagnetic from the spark was enough to create some energy that was picked up by the quote now wire the antenna, that turned into some minor voltage to do some bit flip type of stuff.
That's what I get for using LLMs to summarize an article.
Yeah. Now, obviously, it can be done with tools like the chip shatter, but the chip shatter is $1,000.
Is it really that much?
Yeah. Barbecue lighter, on the other hand, is
pretty cheap.
Yep. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. No chip shatter there. Sorry. But
definitely worth a read. You definitely want to read this article.
Definitely.
It's really cool.
And it's really cool. And the part that I thought was really fascinating too was not only did he just click the lighter and it gave him root, like he had to write an app.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of.
And like
after the fault injection, he took it to the next level.
Well, in order to get the fault injection to work, he had to write an app that would deal with all of the memory caching and all of the so basically he had to start filling memory with all of his instructions. He had to fill like half of the memory with the instructions that he wanted to jump to, or the pointer to the instruction he wanted to jump to. He had to deal with all of the various layers of caches for said memory. So yeah, you had to get an app there to run to effectively do a whole bunch of memory manipulation of the system to set up the possibility for the attack. It wasn't as easy, and arguably this is the style of these types of attacks, the glitching style attacks, whether it's EM, whether it's RF or laser. It might not necessarily require all the times these extra things that he had to do for the RAM stuff. But it is very timing based and very complex to actually pull off.
Yeah, for sure.
Guess what content I taught in the IoT class today?
Did you see Thomas Roth? Do you know Thomas Roth? I think his name is Thomas Roth. He did an interview on the unnamed reverse engineering podcast. I forget his handle, but he was fault injecting the power management chip on MacBook Pros on some Apple laptop, and got to a point where he loaded firmware on that chip that he didn't realize didn't pass the cryptographic hashing checks, and basically bricked the chip that does power management on the Mac.
Whoops.
Which left him in a situation where he had as much battery as he had on the laptop to be able to fix it, because if it lost battery life, it wasn't recognizing the power adapter, because he essentially for lack of a technical term, borked the chip that did power management. So even though power is being applied, that chip was managing the power.
It doesn't know what to do with
Didn't know what to do with it, and it couldn't send it to the right places. And had 8 hours, and he, I believe, essentially fixed it by fault injecting that chip in order to trick it into running a firmware. It's a great interview on the Unnamed Reverse Engineering podcast. Thomas Ron, I can't remember his handle.
It's stack smashing.
Thank you. It was something easy like that. Yeah.
Yep.
Smart dude.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, so I mean, there is some other tools out there. You know, you talk about the barbecue lighter. There is the what is the name of the tool from Electronic Cats? I talked about it today.
Yes,
I picked one of them up at DEF CON. It was like 120.
I think he talks. If you look at the show notes for that Unnamed Reverse Engineering podcast, they got a bunch of, and I think what did you call it? The Cats one,
the Electronic Cats.
Electronic Cats was on that list. Yeah. I saw that. What was that called?
I'll tell you right now.
I saw that from DEF CON.
Faulty Cat.
Yeah, Faulty Cat. Did that didn't debut at DEF CON this year, did it?
No.
They were selling them at DEF CON.
It was the Mininio.
Was that the one with the gun? They had like a gun. It looked like
those are some different guys, but very similar types of things. And with the guys with the quote ray gun, it was doing an EMF based attack. And they wrote a custom app on a little device that effectively, once you did it in the right spot, it was causing it to jump into specific instruction sets to turn the lights red instead of green, type of thing. So, yep, very, very similar stuff. Yeah, the Electronic Cats guys are pretty cool.
Yeah, that looks like cool stuff. Should we stop calling them VPNs?
No.
No? Maybe.
Well, what would you like to call them instead? I'd really be curious about that.
So there's
specifically, what are you talking about, Paul? What VPN?
So, but we've had this debate.
His story number 15.
My story number 15. We've had basically the crux of the debate is we've got things that are what we would call privacy VPNs, right? Like your NordVPN, Proton Express VPN, those kind of things that people use, and they're like, oh, I'm using a VPN. But then we've also got VPNs where we're like, like Tailscale and others where like it's a completely separate network, right? Yep. Like it's a separate kind of thing. Then we got VPNs that are like, oh, we provide you privacy. So
and they don't.
Exactly the point. So should we really call them virtual private networks if they don't really provide all that much privacy? So there's a blog I follow called the Flaming Eyes web blog, and I can't for the life of me remember who this is. I researched it a while ago.
Diego Elio Petanano.
Yeah, he's blogs about really, really cool kind of stuff, and sometimes kind of firmware related, which were definitely hardcore security kind of related. So anyway, the author's arguing that basically these virtual private networks are more traffic aggregators or tunnels. He says true VPNs were originally designed to create private networks over public infrastructure, typically for corporate use. Then consumer VPNs are a beast entirely on their own. Marketing these services as privacy tools is misleading. They can hide your traffic from your ISP, but you're just shifting visibility to that tunneling provider, not your ISP, right? If your endpoint is terminating at your VPN provider, then they can see all of your traffic versus your ISP seeing all of your traffic. He says most websites use HTTPS today, so your ISP cannot see the content of your browsing. And there's also DNS over HTTPS, which can hide your DNS requests. Tunneling services can be useful for bypassing geographical restrictions, as many of us know, or accessing region-locked content, but that's not privacy. That's circumventing terms of service. I agree with that statement wholeheartedly. The author suggests we stop calling these services VPNs because it's inaccurate and misleading. They are not providing the same function as a true corporate VPN. These services can have legitimate uses. Users should be aware of the limitations and potential drawbacks. I will also add that if you're using a VPN in the tunneling aspect of the VPN, that it does nothing for privacy in the browser.
Right.
that your browser is still, we talked about browsers earlier, right? Your browser's still leaking all kinds of privacy stuff. Also, if you're on a VPN and you're using a browser, you're loading code a la JavaScript locally on your machine that's running in the context of your machine inside the browser, which basically wipes away most of your privacy more so than your network traffic does traversing the internet.
So I think the concept of, it's just a tunnel. Well, what is a VPN? It is a tunnel, an encrypted tunnel between two networks. And arguably like a consumer VPN, and we're talking like taking my corporate laptop and firing up my VPN client and connecting it back to my corporate network. That's creating a tunnel between the network, the one on my system, to the corporate one, so that I can gain access to internal resources. So that's even really close to the B2B style that he's alluding to here.
But maybe there's a split tunnel so you can access the internet outside of your VPN, which we've deemed as very bad.
Yep. So, all right. And now for me, using a quote VPN in this style is less about my privacy. Because like that's what the marketing is to all these the consumers
privacy.
Is about the privacy. Me,
or
it's more about
bypassing terms of service.
Yeah, for me, it is so you can change where your endpoint comes out.
Or you can visit websites that you. So I love kids are amazing, and I love my kids, and they sometimes say stuff that they probably shouldn't to me, and then they catch themselves, and they're like, "Oh, I just use a VPN so that when I'm at school, I can browse whatever website that I want." I'm like, you're doing what now? They're like, nothing, Dad, nothing to see here. Move along.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, do tell. Because right now I'm kind of proud. Like there's a huge part of me that's really proud, to be quite honest, when you're bypassing stuff like that. There's also a thing where you're violating terms of service for the school and you're going to get caught.
Yep.
And then I'm going to be called in a teacher meeting. I'm going to be really flipping pissed off.
Yep. That VPN traffic is traversing their network, which they monitor. Correct. Do you think they might notice? Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, it's not about privacy. It's about the security. You go into a hotel and you turn on your laptop and you connect to the Wi-Fi network, the open unencrypted Wi-Fi network. I don't want everybody else there to view my traffic, even if it is HTTPS and all that good stuff at a higher layer. I don't want them to find any other stuff that I might be doing. I don't want them to have direct access to my machine. So non-split tunneled VPN. And to me, that is security.
My oldest said that they were blocking Chat GPT at the high school. And I was like, no, that's the wrong approach.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Just no. They should be teaching you how to use it, not blocking it. Nope.
Yep.
Especially if you got kids in middle school and high school, they should be learning how to use AI. In fact, I was having this conversation with one of my friends whose son is a senior and wants to do computer engineering and programming. I'm like, I really hope they're teaching them how to use AI to help with their programming, because when they go to apply for a job after college, 4 years from now, the first question is going to be, how are you using AI to help you write better code? Right. Yep. I think it's going to be the first question in every friggin' interview for a software enviewer. Yep. Especially 4 years from now.
From the guy who's teaching programming classes. Sam, what do you think?
Yeah. What do you think about that, Sam? That's a good segue.
I'm sorry. Can you tell me the question again? I got distracted.
So I have a friend whose son is a senior in high school.
Yeah.
And
they're using VPNs.
Looking to go to college, right?
They're
looking to go to school to write code, be a software engineer. Yeah. And I'm like, I really hope that they're learning now in high school and will continue to learn in college how to use AI to help them write better code. And integrate that into their workflow, because when 4 years from now, when they graduate, I think the first question is going to be like, how much do you know about AI that will help you write better code?
Well, I've told all my students to use AI, and they've all reported the same thing I found. It's really not that helpful.
But today, sure. I liken it today to having an intern who can code at high school, maybe college level code, which is useful to me as a more. I wouldn't consider myself a senior developer, but I've been writing code for a really long time.
Senior in age, but
and I've been writing code for a really long time. I wouldn't attach that to like I could be a senior developer at a software company. No, that senior means I'm just old and I've been writing code for a long time, and therefore an AI kind of helps me get 80% of the way there, as if I were to give a coding challenge to a high school or college student and go,
Yep.
hey, can you write me code that does XYZ? And they would come back with very similar what would come back from an LLM. Sam, is that your experience?
Well, yeah, I just think everybody's getting used to it. It's like spell check, it's just another
Yeah.
tool. It's nothing all that special, really.
I find it saves time, especially when I've prompted it to write Python code. I'm like, I want this code to do this, but I want these command line options. And what it does is it documents each one of those and writes all the code to accept those command line options. I'm like, that just saved me like so many hours worth of like really tedious bullshit stuff. That's not even really like code. It's
That's
just
how I
like
use it
tedious
too.
stuff. Like,
Yep.
oh, like yeah, just get me there, and then I'm good.
I
The
don't-
logic end of it, and like duplication and efficiency of code, it's horrible at, which most junior software engineers are horrible. I was completely horrible when I was learning code at being more efficient, right? That's what I learned from senior developers, was how to be more efficient. And I think that's where we're at with LLMs generating code today.
Yeah, I mean, it often suggests the next 3 or 4 lines, and about half the time, it's mostly right, and I have to fix it. It's not really saving me that much time, but it's a little bit more convenient than Googling the right syntax for a command every
Oh,
few
great.
minutes, which is what I would be doing otherwise.
So have you
I
guys?
find it's great if you give it data and you're like, hey, like read and parse this data in this way and give me some command line options. I'm like, you just saved me a ton of time. In certain aspects, it saves more time than others.
Bill, you got a comment in there.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you guys tried out the Cursor app yet? Have you tried Cursor?
No, I've heard of that. It's
so-
like an IDE that integrates LLMs
Yeah,
to
so
write code.
it's just like VS Code, but you have your choice of LLM riding along Copilot with you, and Paul, you're using it exactly how I use it for all of those. Hey, I know that I have this block of code right here that's just the command line options is a perfect example. I don't want to
it's great.
I have to go read those. I have to read it every time, and and I just like, hey, just generate this, boom, done, perfect,
Right.
done. But I also agree with you. Where it's failing is just breaking up code into small chunks. And it seems to me I get this wall of here's
wall of big code.
yeah,
And it duplicates. What I found recently is it duplicates functionality. Where I'm like, wait, you just put a function here and another function there,
yeah,
and those two functions do the exact same thing. Or
Right.
like within a function, you're doing the exact same thing in that function, but you also created a function to do the exact same thing. And that's kind of like a junior programmer mistake, where I would be reviewing their code going, no, efficiency.
So I do kind
Do
of
the
want to
operation in one function and do it really well, and have the rest of your code call that function. LLMs don't quite get that yet. At least the Chat GPT and the GPTs that do Python, that's the biggest flaw I found.
So I do kind of want to circle back to the VPN article real quick. So I think the biggest issue is and if you're a listener and you are not. So Larry, one of the things that you said, I don't use a VPN. I use a VPN for this, and you had a very specific use case for what you're using it for.
Yep.
If you're a listener and you don't have that very specific use case, or you don't exactly know how VPNs work or what they're doing or how it changes your threat profile, I gave I was going to say a very good talk. I thought a very good talk at SaintCon a couple years ago, specifically on this topic. What does Tor do? What does VPN do? How can you be anonymous on the internet? So if you're interested in that topic, go look up my talk at SaintCon. And so what I want to do is use that SaintCon as a segue. Just so everybody knows, SaintCon is in Utah, in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's happening next week, and Trent's going to be speaking next week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so really excited for that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Give him a shout out. So
Are you going to be at St. Con?
So I wish. I'm not going to be at St. Con this year, but I'm going to try real hard to be at Shmoo if I get a ticket, or even if I don't.
Yeah.
No, don't worry about a ticket. Just book your hotel.
Hallway con it,
Yeah,
man.
Yep.
for sure.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm gonna. I still need to book my hotel for that. Thanks for the
I
reminder.
think my hotel is booked.
I'll be
I
at
think you
St.
did.
Con. Yep.
You'll be at St.
Oh, you
Con,
will.
Sam.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
make sure.
teaching secure coding there, in fact.
So
Nice.
Sam, I'll
Yeah.
I'll tell Trent this as well, but try real hard to go see his talk if you can. I think it was on Tuesday, I believe.
What's his talk going to be about?
So it's a really interesting topic about why he gave up on bug hunting, and it's all the frustrations that he's had with reporting reporting bugs and
Yeah.
the type of pushback that he's gotten and those kind of things. I think he's going to drop some secrets about Z War Dial, I think, which will be a lot of fun if which was a tool that he and I released, but. It'll be a great talk, and if you guys haven't met Trent Serbo online, great dude. It'll certainly be a fun talk.
Heck yeah.
All right. Thanks.
We've had lots of shenanigans over
We have had
the
a
years.
lot of shenanigans.
A lot of shenanigans. We should
my
just do a
goodness.
whole show on shenanigans at some point.
Speaking
the whole
of
show
speaking of
about
shenanigans, speaking of shenanigans,
Yeah.
I'd love to hit Bill's story number 1.
Bill,
See, I didn't
See,
see
Sam.
Bill's. Oh, Redbox devices.
Oh my
Contain
goodness.
user info.
Yeah. So
And this one hit this chord with me because something went by one of my feeds today. That one of the guys I follow on like Instagram who does like dumpster diving and shows all the things that he finds, was told by this one store that you want this Redbox machine? Sure, get it out of here.
oh my gosh.
It's free, but you got to take it down these stairs.
Oh,
jeez.
Redbox is in like when you
movies.
rent DVDs, not
Yes.
Redboxing as you're hacking the phone system.
That's right. So,
Correct.
so
Okay.
what I love about this link, and first of all, go to that link. My number one is just like some like I don't know what kind of chat that is, Mastodon chat. It looks like.
Digipress.club.
Yeah,
I
and
did. So they opened up the Redbox unit and pulled the hard drive.
That's right. So we've talked about this with printers for years, right? If you see an old printer on the road, grab it because you never know what documents are going to be on that hard drive in there. And
Yeah.
bad news here with with the Redbox again, the DVD rental type machines. There is a hard drive in. When pulled out, it looks like there was in clear text all of the titles that were ever rented and all of the email addresses of those who rented him. It's not the end of the world.
That's not. It is
You
not the end of the world. I don't think they rent adult titles, so they don't. That would be worse.
For sure.
But-
Not
For
the end of
sure.
the world. End of the world here. And to be honest, if
I mean, I could have
anybody
told you
here-
that Bill likes midget porn, but that's
well, I mean, I
that'll
posted about it on Twitter, so like
there you
whatever,
go. There you go.
Midget
But-
tossing porn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you do see a red box on the side of the road, hey, grab it and grab that hard drive, see what's fun on
So
there.
they found, but so are they discontinue? Are they getting rid of Redbox devices? So now you find them kind of like telephone booths and old technology like that.
I don't know the last time I've seen one. I mean, I don't know. If you have
There's
them in-
one in my local CVS
Hmm.
in my town.
Yeah, I
It's
don't
interesting.
know.
Now I got to just wait until they get rid of it.
So I'm looking
Will it be on the
at
side of the road?
Reddit 3 months ago. So will Redbox be selling any of their DVDs? Because Redbox officially announced today that they're shutting down for good.
Oh,
really?
interesting. Well, I mean, how could I don't even understand how Redbox was still a thing. I thought that would have went by the wayside with Blockbuster and Netflix, like mailing DVDs.
I mean, doesn't everybody have Plex now?
Yeah. So
Dude, there's like a million ways to watch. Everyone watches content online.
Yep. From a bunch of Redbox leaves behind 24,000 unusable DVD kiosks. Like,
Are the
They-
DVDs
they're
still
just-
in there?
yeah, they're just abandoning them. And
Well,
let's
because
see,
it would cost them too much to read.
what-
What would they do with it?
Walgreens is reportedly stuck paying $184,000 a month to power the Redbox machines.
What?
Whoa.
Oh, like globally, like
Yeah.
all their
Globally, yeah,
stores
yeah.
combined.
Anna, what
the
could we use
power-
them for? What we should
How did they determine that?
What's
That's
inside
actually
a Redbox machine?
You know, it's kind of interesting that organizations can't do asset management or attack surface management or patch management really well. But how much power a device plugged into
they
or
can
like
give
from
you.
the grid,
Right.
I know exactly what that number is. Like, how fucked up is that?
You know, it'd be interesting to have a Redbox machine in an area where there's a very bad internet connection or no internet,
No, I agree.
and
You mean
turn
like
it into a library.
you mean like North Korea?
Well, I mean, like, actually, I mean, like,
but
there's
have we
areas
gotten
in
to the point?
Appalachia.
But have we gotten to the point where broadband is pervasive in all the areas
No.
in the U.S.? We haven't,
No,
right?
do you know how many subscribers there are for
No.
dial-up still?
You know how many people we talk to on a regular basis, like mutual friends of ours that are like, I just live in like a rural area and there is no broadband.
There's
I talk to people all the
20
time that are like,
million still dial-ups.
it would cost $15,000 to get the fiber to my house, and I'm not willing to pay that, and they shouldn't, right?
Well, let's send them all the Redbox machines.
In 2021, the Census Bureau estimated more than 375 people are still on dial-up.
How many people?
375,000 households are
What-
still on dial-up
what year?
as of 2021.
21.
2021.
Okay.
I mean, how many households are in the U.S. though? That's a very small percentage.
It's not money. It's not many, but as of a couple of years ago, it was still 22 million people. So that
Not
was the last
enough
time
to
I remember.
sustain Redbox though.
Yeah.
Well, no, agreed. But I
Yeah.
mean, the point is, if we drop some library, either DVDs or library books, audio books or whatever into those things, they're just, and do it as a lending library, turn it into a little library like what they have all over the place with the books in them.
Yep. I mean, so yeah, and when we talk about the Walgreens
Ooh,
thing,
I could use one for my kids.
Walgreens says that it's still paying $184,000 a month to continue to power the machines, even though you can't actually rent a movie, because the machines are wired to the store's greater power supply, and some of them are actually built into the store, like an ATM machine or an automatic.
Okay, so that's almost $2 million a year. Do you think Walgreens is spending that on patching? You know what I mean?
No,
Right.
but they're shutting down a bunch of stores
Yeah.
because of lack of sales. So, hey, kids.
Did Sam drop? I want to talk about his
He
story
did.
number 2. So there was a recently released,
I did read this article. So, yep.
HBO film on the history of the world's biggest digital currency, Money Electric, the Bitcoin mystery. And I mean, spoiler alert, we don't know who created Bitcoin
Yeah.
still, even though there was an HBO documentary.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times on this show have we talked about who created Bitcoin?
Oh, God.
Yep.
And holy shit, like even some of us knew some of the players involved.
Yep.
Craig Wright.
Yep.
Like I sat and had beers with Craig Wright at Sands events.
Uh-huh.
And there's so much. Is
Yeah.
it disinformation? Is
Yep.
it mystery? Is
Well,
it like what?
So
What it really? Like before I die, I can't peacefully leave this world until I know the story behind who created fucking Bitcoin.
and who's
Like I
Satoshi
can't.
is.
Like it bugs me to no end that we can't just say like someone just with evidence and proof come forward who created Bitcoin. Like why? Like why can't we have this?
Why would they do that?
Exactly. So I mean, this article is kind of great about some of those.
Just
types
to
of
piss
things.
me off, Bill, is the answer.
No.
So-
I think you misunderstood my question. Why would they come
Oh.
forward? Right? Like it's not in their interest.
Right, because you have all of this money, and now you become a target. And this was part of the thing that the creators of this documentary, who accused or pointed to Peter Todd as being Satoshi, now have effectively put a target on him
Mhm.
for having all of this money and being the creator and all of this type of stuff, to the point that he said that as soon as this documentary came out and is pointing at him, like he actually had to do some emergency travel to relocate because he was not safe at his current location because of these quote
Because
accusations.
he was just accusations and suspected.
Yep.
Therefore,
and accusations as part of this documentary, and like and I don't know if I want to say anything bad about the creator of the documentary, but looking at the article from the Register, is that Hoback, the guy that created the documentary, had us another documentary on a same kind of coincidence-based circumstantial thinking documentary about what fueled QAnon and trying to find QAnon's founder.
I think I watched that one,
And it was very,
and it was very like you. At the end, you still don't know who was
Yeah.
behind
Yep.
QAnon.
And like,
Yeah.
so Peter Todd is saying that, he was doing this other documentary on QAnon and Bitcoin came up. So he needed some big thing to get people to watch his documentary on QAnon. So tie it to Bitcoin, and everybody wants to know who Satoshi is. So we'll include this in my QAnon thing.
Mm.
And with the same level of tomfoolery.
Isn't it wild that, so before Bitcoin, we didn't have Bitcoin, okay, or crypto or blockchain, right? Like, but before that we didn't have, so it's kind of hard in your brain to be like, man, that was some very creative, that was a very creative and really, whether you like it or not, it really did change the shape of computing and, like blah, blah, blah.
Oh, it changed
blah,
a
blah.
lot of things, dude.
But
Like
they also, so not only were they smart enough to understand how to, like what the potential was, how to do it, but they also like remained anonymous. Like I think that
you're right, Bill. Like
I think it was aliens.
the ability to remain anonymous when so many of us with the skills and knowledge to like dig into this, right?
Use
like
Bitcoin, right? Like, yeah, like.
Did you create your own cryptocurrency called Bitcoin?
No. I'm just saying, like, if we were to be the ones developing that right now, like, think about the marketing.
Do I need to do that?
Push or whatever, that I just find it intriguing, so and Bitcoin didn't catch on because of, who's Satoshi. It caught on for a completely different reason.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it was it was Rage Against the Machine that got Bitcoin on the map. It was the 2008 financial fall that was like, we need a different system to rely upon for financial transactions.
So I'm not asserting that you own any Bitcoin, but is that why you got into Bitcoin?
No.
No.
But I think the early adopters did, because it was, oh my God, the establishment, the status quo is money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like green paper. And when that fell down in 2008, they're like, we need an alternative. And that fueled enough people to get behind Bitcoin to be like, we need to be independent. And that's what like shined a spotlight on the Satoshi paper. And I don't know, man. Did they plan it that way? How they remained anonymous to this point?
So what you're saying is Rage Against the Machine is Satoshi.
Yeah.
I mean, you have as much evidence as HBO. I'm voting
for
you.
I'm calling it
right.
now.
So interestingly enough, on the cryptography mailing list, which I'm a member of, just the other day, actually, somebody claimed to be Satoshi Nakamoto. I just threw it in Slack. But
but anyone can claim to be.
Oh no. This
helps them.
That
helps them. The more people that claim it.
Well, that's the other thing too, is that like that was part of the evidence from this documentary, was that at one point Todd had said, "Yeah, I'm Satoshi," because everybody fucking says they're Satoshi.
Oh, everybody says it
because it's
a
joke.
But no, like the Metstout
have we
cryptography
ruled
mailing
out
list was
Craig
where the
Wright? Have we
original white
ruled
paper
out
came
Craig
out.
Wright? Hold on.
Yes.
Have we ruled out Craig Wright as Satoshi?
We have.
Yes.
I really thought that was selfishly. I think I've said this on the show before. I really wanted it to be Craig Wright, because then I could say I knew
I had beers with Satoshi.
Yeah. I would have a T-shirt. I had beers with Satoshi, right? It grinds my gears.
Yeah. You know what else grinds my gears?
Lindsay Lohan. Yep. It's true.
Thanks, Peter. You know what really grinds my gears? Lindsay Lohan. What else we got?
I got Access cameras.
Yup. All right.
My
Yeah, I
story
wanna
number
hear
9,
about
no,
this
dude.
one.
But this one's really. So I've got some really cool articles from companies that it's interesting. Like they didn't find the original vulnerability.
They
But-
found the guy that found the vulnerability.
No, they were awesome at describing the vulnerability and extending it. And so this is my story number 9. And the RTech team, basically they looked at an access IP camera security vulnerability that Tenable disclosed. And they were like, hey, we found these on a pen test. And they were like, the exploit didn't work. And so we made the exploit work. Based on the previous research, right? So they got remote code execution on the cameras by uploading a malicious app file. Like this is like the most we talked about, like security architecture with Ken in the previous segment, right? This is like horrible security architecture. I can upload an app to the Axis camera that enables functionality, and the guardrails around that were
What guardrails?
I mean, did you have to be
superflouse.
authenticated to do that?
What is the
You
what is
did.
the English word? Superflouse?
Superfluous.
Superfluous.
Superfluous?
Superfluous. Yeah.
Here we go.
Superfluous.
There we go.
I would
Together
say
we
the
got
guard-
it. Together.
My
He's going
statement would be
Superfly.
the
I'm like, what the hell is
guardrails are
Superfly?
superfluous.
They're extra.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're extra.
That is exactly.
Superfly.
So they're like, if I define the application in a slightly different way, I still get remote code execution as a normal user. Exercise for the reader. You figure out how to get that to root. That's basically my story number 9,
Christmas.
Now,
which I love.
And
by
I
the
think,
way, I think it's
I forget who asked it, but who said that they had to be authenticated already?
Yeah, I asked. Did the user have to be authenticated to
I
upload
think
the app?
so.
yes, but it's this whole thing of it's one thing to be a user on the system, right? Like I can authenticate to the web application, and I can be a user. That gives me some level of privilege built on that application. But if I can execute commands within the underlying operating system, to me that's another level, right, of execution.
So yeah,
Completely
RTech
agree.
recently analyzed an Axis IP camera of the model F9111 in a penetration test for our customers. We already had administrative credentials for the web interface of the camera, but the published exploit failed to take over the operating system. This
I
blog
see.
post describes our analysis steps and how we still took over the operating system in a slightly different way. And yet, while they had administrative rights to the camera itself, so they could look at the video and all this type of stuff,
Sure.
having access to the underlying operating system is yet a level up. So now you can start doing additional manipulation. You can add that to your C2. You can use it as a pivot point. Maybe find ways to exfiltrate video, all sorts of other fun stuff.
Correct.
So kind of neat.
Video
But
cameras
was
should
this
not
the
be internet
PHP?
facing.
Was this the PHP? This was PHP, wasn't it?
No.
No, God, now it's in German.
Just,
No,
well, the
They have this
original
thing called
article was in
Translate, you
German.
know.
okay, no, now it's not in German. I want to.
What?
The author of the article is Fabian Mosch, and his Twitter handle,
His X handle.
X handle is @shitsecure.
Love it.
I like this person already. We need to hang out. We
Yeah.
need to get some beers. The
Yeah, we
next
got to get
conference,
Fabian.
right?
We got to get Fabian on the show. We
Yeah,
got to get shit secure on the show.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Actually,
great.
you know what?
You
Yeah.
make sure you read this article. It's
Josh?
great. Great explanation
Sam.
and kind of riffing on. There was a vulnerability. There was an exploit, but it didn't work, and we made it work.
Josh, you had a comment.
Well, I said we should do Sam's story number 3 if we didn't do it already. I don't think we did that one.
So
I
Just
know
for Bill.
Sam. I think he
iron-
had to go teach a class.
the irony, Paul, is about while you're spooling up the irony that when you put this Axis story story, and I'm like, oh, Axis. Because what has been the ubiquitous go-to for when you need to talk about an IoT type of exploit?
It's an access
It's
camera.
fucking
Video
Axis
surveillance
camera.
cameras.
It's
Yeah,
fucking
well,
Axis
access cameras were always the budget enterprise video surveillance camera.
Yep.
They built out 10 years ago. They built out a very expensive line, but they've kept their, we are the budget video surveillance camera forever and ever and ever and ever. And when all you build is the budget video surveillance camera, you tend to have budget security systems as well. And nothing against Axis Camera. For the people that it's good for, it's fantastic. I mean, they built a camera system before anybody else that had its own control system built into the camera. You could control 16 cameras from within having one camera near you and plugging into the damn thing.
Yep. I mean,
Okay,
I was exploring Axis cameras in like 1998 when I
think
worked
we
at the
had.
university.
Do we have?
So was I.
That's a Linksys one. Yeah, no.
They're great little cameras for the price.
But
the
dude,
problem is the price
but,
means
like,
that you don't get the
Sam
features
story
like
number
security.
3 though. I have to say I want to hype this up more than what it is, but
Sam's story number 3.
Sam's
Just for
story
Bill.
number 3 is Assault Typhoon.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So there's, in my mind, 4 campaigns by Chinese threat actors that are at least incorporating network appliances in addition to IoT infrastructure in their campaigns.
Mhm.
And that's Salt Typhoon, I think, is the most recent one. Flax Typhoon is the second one on the list. Volt Typhoon was talked about by Microsoft in late 2023.
Mhm.
And I think this year, I want to say February, there was Velvet Ant.
No Typhoon on that one.
No Typhoon in that one, but it was tied back to Chinese threat actors. So all the Typhoons, so we got Salt, Flax, Volt, then Velvet Ant.
Yep.
And chronologically, that doesn't match up, but all 4 incidents or hacking campaigns tied back to Chinese threat actors, all of which incorporate some level of attacking Cisco, F5, Fortinet, Draytech, IoT manufacturers, right? So when Sam ended the story, I'm like, this is what I'm tracking very, very closely.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the one that keeps me up at night, because what is the motive behind all these Chinese threat actors that are going after this infrastructure that is largely representative in VPN router switches, but also kind of like broadband IoT gear?
Well, what's the motivation to attack these devices? Allow them to monitor or restrict traffic traversing those devices?
They can monitor. So specifically talking about this Sam's article, right?
Yep.
And I didn't read it. I just read it, so I haven't
It's
read
a short
it
article,
closely.
fortunately.
It looks like they were attacking the Kalia system, so that gives.
Oh yeah, this one is this one's heinous.
Yeah, it's
the
Kalea.
back door in the back.
Kalea?
Right.
It's the back. They exploited the back door in the back door.
Right. And so
Right?
that provides information and the ability to put on tap traces, right? So you can't block data, right? Or anything.
Right. It's passive.
Yeah.
Passive monitoring, effectively. But in the larger scheme of things, when Paul was talking about all these other ones with like F5 and Cisco, like it gives them the ability to do passive monitoring for all sorts of data, intellectual property, political, you name it, and the potential to misdirect, to do disinformation type of campaigns, to
But also great
prevent
C2.
prevent
Great C2.
Yep, prevent
Awesome
service
C2.
and infiltrate deeper, because they're typically on the edge of some of these networks, to infiltrate into other networks, to get more IP, to get more data, to be able to do more.
If we went to the dark
information.
side, we'd be like, oh, we're going to go after like VPN and network appliances, because that's where we can hide. We can have great impact. We can have great stealthy abilities. We can have great persistence because no one's looking here. The visibility into these devices is very poor.
Yep, and
we would do the same thing.
And to patch these devices creates some downtime, and they've got to have
it's a pain in the ass.
pretty robust
all
strategies
of
to
us
not
have been in
have
the
downtime.
situation where we're like, oh, I need to patch these devices. Like, oh my God, that's heinous.
So I want to kind of come back to this article. So I have owned and managed this for a very large telco.
Oh yeah,
right?
You work for an ISP, right?
Yeah, for a telco, and this is something that we were mandated to do. This is something that we were audited for our capability. And if we were not, if we did not respond to Kalia requests and I don't remember what the timeline was, 30 minutes, something like that,
Oof.
came with tremendous fines, right?
Kalia was like 2007-ish time frame, right? I remember I worked at Ocean at the time, and we were talking about Kalia because when I worked at Ocean was technically an ISP, and we were in the crosshairs of complying with Kalia request.
1994.
Is that
Kalia was passed in 94?
I want to say that, but there was some modification.
In 2004, it massively expanded the wiretap mandate. To include internet access providers.
Right.
So 2004.
And so I think that the purpose of this
Yay,
article,
backdoors.
right, Josh, you're that's exactly right. That's where I want to take it. Is where you're taking it, Josh, is that
You want to take it to the back door, Bill?
I want to take it to that back door. But, for a long time, there has been a lot of talks about backdoors and encryption. There's been all of these things. And the security, people have been saying.
You ever watch that show, The Middle?
No.
You ever watch that show, The Middle? With the youngest son, it has the thing where he does the whispering. He's like, back doors.
Well, we've been saying for years, right, that there's no such thing
Backdoors
as a safe security backdoor. We're never going to get a point here
Hear
because
it
there's
now.
that
Bill
word.
Swearingen has said that there's not a safe backdoor for anyone out
It
there.
all
Listen,
just
I'm
proves that
glad
we're 13 years old at heart, and we
Yeah.
can't say back doors without some kind of
dirty joke.
dirty.
I give up. Why am I
13,
the
I think you're
adult?
giving us a lot of
Why am
credit.
I the adult right now? I'm not.
I don't know.
If you're the adult in the room right now, we
We're
are
so
screwed. We are so
Bill, I'm trying to help
right
you.
in the back door. We are screwed.
I am
Bill.
trying to help you be the adult here, but I'm giggling with everybody
Says
else.
the man in the mankini.
Yeah.
Anyway,
The point. Okay, we can move on.
So Bill, back to your back door.
Listen.
oh yeah, you're really trying to
This
help
story
him
is
there.
never
Good
going to
job,
work on
Larry.
this show. It's just never going to
Nope.
work. Yep.
Nope. Let's put it this way. No,
Putting in
backdoor is
deliberate
safe.
security vulnerabilities is never a
Swearingen.
good idea.
Putting in backdoor, bad news.
But in all seriousness,
Bill can't even stop himself from laughing at that one.
I am very concerned about
Your back door?
Chinese threat actors in what they've been targeting and at the scale they have been targeting.
Yeah, we're also in a
I am
very
concerned right
political.
now.
We're in a very political climate right now, right? There's a lot of talk about how the U.S. is going to respond to China, right? So, with goods and
Taiwan.
services,
Yep.
and obviously their own political, So, I would imagine that this type of information is to gather, maybe intel or some leverage on very specific people would be my guess. I don't know.
And not and Bill, I'd even say not even necessarily specific people, but it's probably a lot of economic, like intellectual property. I mean, you think about what was it, Huawei?
Huawei,
Arguably
Huawei.
Okay. Arguably, Huawei infiltrated Cisco to steal all their intellectual property so that they could make routers.
They did that to us too, right? Like they were. It was shocking the extent that they would, try to get into.
I mean, let's be clear. The NSA did the same thing.
Of course,
I mean,
for sure. Yeah, it's not a
Like,
bad idea. It was just, like, hey, don't attack me, bro.
Yeah, like what's the saying? When you point one finger at someone else, there's four fingers pointing back at you, right? So yeah.
No, I don't think so.
No, but you're not pointing it at someone else.
Oh,
You're
and
merely
the horse you rode in on.
They say, look, but now there are four fingers pointing back at you. Three fingers.
Don't you wonder why it was Cisco? Huh, weird.
Yeah, weird. Huh.
I don't know if you guys read my story number 12.
Nope, I'm just kidding.
It's fine.
Patching is overrated. VPN's overrated. Patching is overrated.
Yep. We got to talk about the overrated. So I just want to read you a quote from this article because this kind of summed it up for me from this article. They say, In the fairy tale land of security theater, product exploits are out there getting stopped by intrusion prevention systems all day. Let that sink in. This is in the fairy tale land.
Mm-hmm.
All these product exploits are being stopped by intrusion prevention systems, right? In reality, people aren't running
uses
exploits
IPSs?
over the wire, and an IPS is sitting around burning up budget. In real life, people are finding a page that says, click here to download all the secret data, and clicking a button. Now, grossly exaggerated in this article, but it speaks to, I think, some of the things we don't want to talk about
Both
in our
can be
industry
true.
that, right? Both could definitely be true, but are we focusing on the wrong thing? This is where this article kind of hit home for me is, are we focusing on the wrong things? It's where I was going in the previous segment with Ken, right? Was a lot of us get hung up on, I got to patch the CVSS 9 to 10s, and that's consuming my life, my patching, my organization, where we need to take a step back and go, what are attackers really going after?
Mm-hmm.
Is it really the critical vulnerability or any vulnerability in my environment, something I haven't patched? Or is it more so they're going after weak credentials, all this other stuff that basically is a means to an end? It's the same result, right?
Yep.
We talked about this so many times on the show, and this article was really great, I thought, at articulating maybe we're focusing on the wrong things.
And I think a little bit of this, Paul, I feel is right, that attackers are looking at the lowest hanging fruit. And if that means default credentials and social engineering and
if
so
it means
forth,
a stupid missing patch,
yep,
sure.
And I would also agree with that. But a lowest hanging fruit with something with a CVSS of 9.9 that has publicly available exploit code for something in your organization is directly connected to the internet or could be accessed via social engineering, I would say that that's something that we should deal with, and that some patching is overrated, but not all of it. I mean,
correct.
Let's take it back to basics. God damn, how long have we been saying that for? Take it back to basics. Like your patching strategy and dealing with patches in a reasonably timely fashion should be part of your basic strategy for security, for defense in depth. It should not be the only thing, but it should be one component of a whole bunch of stuff that you do.
Exactly what the article said. I
didn't read the article. I'm good.
Toot
my own horn.
You're totally spot on. We can't just go around patching and think we're done.
Nope. Hell no.
No.
Hell no. We should still have that IPS. And we should still do social engineering training. And we should still engage with vendors that do secure by design. So meaning no vendors at all.
Yeah, but also the process behind. There's this moment in the show where I asked Tyler Robinson, what separates the companies that are successful in defending against attackers versus the ones that aren't. And what Tyler said resonates with me to this day. And he said, Paul, it's about the communication between the teams, right? It's not about what did you patch. It's not about what did you configure. It's really about how are the teams able to communicate with each other to identify a threat and respond quickly. And those are the most difficult organizations to breach, are the organizations that work together as a team, that have a solid process
and can communicate.
And you communicate, but not so much who can patch this, who can patch that, technical. It's more about the process. It's more about communication than anything else.
You mean it's about compliance and process and security and process and communication with the business? And
I didn't say compliance. I don't think I used the word compliance in that, Josh. You used the word compliance.
That's where you get process from.
I didn't use the word compliance. You did.
I did. That's where you get process from.
Not all the time. Not all the time. But
but I would argue that security, compliance, and process are three different things, and they're all equally important.
I would argue that that's not true. I think that you operationalize compliance as process, which helps to push security to operationalize security as process. And development's in there as well, by the way, let's be clear, because
I think
along
there's a
with CI/CD
relationship between all of
Yeah.
those, but the relationship status, if you were to put that on Facebook, is complicated, right?
process is an outgrowth of a mature compliance.
That's
a
how I
mature
describe
security,
it.
a
I
mature
was actually
development
asked earlier, John,
systems.
you would love this because you were on Security and Compliance Weekly,
I
which I
was.
totally think should be a show again because it still
I'm
comes
up for
up
it
right.
anytime.
Like, dude, totally. But I was asked, like, what's the relationship between security and compliance? And my answer was, if it was a relationship status, it would be
it's complicated.
It's complicated,
That
right?
that I can live with, my friend.
Right?
That I can live with.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
I digress.
Yeah.
Into another story.
Probably our last one at this point.
Horizon 3 did some awesome stuff. Oh my God. This was the one that was PHP.
Was
My
this,
story number 10.
I was going to say, was this command jacking one? But
Good Lord. This is the Palo Alto Expedition. Do you guys know what Palo Alto Expedition is?
it sounds painful.
All of us have used similar technologies. This is, you're not a Palo Alto shop. You're using other technology. And you want to get to being a Palo Alto shop. So you run this tool.
It's a migration tool.
And it migrates you all to being a Palo Alto shop. But it turns out it has heinous vulnerabilities. In Horizon 3.
Say it's not so. Tell me it's a red box. Tell me it's a red box machine.
No, I'm telling you that this
At
guy
Walgreens.
named Zach Hanley made a blog on October 9th that walks you through every excruciating detail as to why it is not secure at all. And it involves PHP. Surprisingly, shockingly, it involves PHP. And a database and SQL injection.
We just need to move to Rust. It'll be fine.
Oh my God. Everyone, you should just go read this. It is just, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It really is. Yeah. Yeah.
Good Lord.
I lost track of how many CVEs there was 3, I think.
Looks like 4.
3 or 4 CVEs.
You see 4 listed there.
Yeah.
So chained together, they go from 0 to full compromise in this example.
Mm-hmm. And what, like some of these CVEs, were these like critical highs? Or were we going from low to pwned?
No,
like
low to pwned. This is a low to pwned situation,
man.
Larry.
So,
but only 23. So only 23 Palo Alto Expedition servers were exposed to the internet.
23 too many.
It's a low number because again, it's a utility that you're using for a migration.
Yep.
So you spin it down, but
Yep.
still.
Yeah. It's
So,
a point
like,
in time.
Yeah. For those newer listeners to the show, Jesus, more than 15 years ago, Val Smith and HD Moore gave a talk at DEF CON
Whatever happened to
and
Val
Black
Smith?
Hat
happened to
entitled Low to Pwned.
Oh my God.
It is still
It's
applicable
ahead
today.
of its time. That talk was so ahead of its time.
It is still applicable today, and
Mhm.
everybody worries about the highs and criticals,
Mhm.
but no one gives two shits about the lows. And effectively, what they were doing here was taking a bunch of low classified vulnerabilities and
Yep.
turning that into what could arguably be a critical situation. Yeah, low to pwned. I don't know what ever happened to Val Smith. He's apparently still. Last I saw, he was doing a whole bunch of technology stuff, but was very much off the grid, off radar.
Yeah, he was,
and is happy that way.
Mm.
And like, I think when he was in the heyday of the load opponent and he was doing a bunch of that stuff, he wasn't necessarily happy that he was in the spotlight, but he felt that he needed to have something to say to help the community, and he felt he did his piece. And now he just is. He's doing that. He's fighting the good fight. But he's doing it for his own.
He came on the show. I want to say,
I think he did.
Yeah.
It's but again, back in the heyday.
time ago.
But back in the
long
heyday.
time ago.
But he's very happy just doing his own thing and just being quiet about it and helping people doing.
I just
doing
saw
their thing.
HD at JohnCon. He just gave a talk.
Yeah, I see HD all over the place, and he's good.
Yeah, well, he's the figurehead of his company, Run Zero, or what's it
Yeah,
called?
Yeah,
now?
Run
Run
Zero.
Zero.
Yep.
Run Zero. Okay.
Yeah,
And it's cyber asset attack surface management tool.
Yep.
It's
Yeah,
dope.
I got a chance to talk to HD not that long ago at S4
Oh, nice.
because he was
Yeah,
there.
I actually called him out. I was on the curmudgeon panel with Jeff and Xerxes and a few other people. Jeff Mann.
You were
And,
on the curmudgeon panel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not surprising.
Like, what can I say? I'm a curmudgeon. And we're talking, and somebody goes, "Well, has anybody ever done anything?" One of the questions was, "Have you ever done anything with old technology in a modern time?" And I went, "HD did. He did with the what is it, VxWorks with the
Yep.
Martian rover,
Mhm.
Oh, he's done it
and he reached back
multiple
30
times.
years
Yep.
to do a modern hack." And I'm like, "HD, talk about it." And they brought him a mic, and he's like, "Okay," and he talked about it for a minute. So it was pretty cool.
In a minute in HD cadence is
14 hours.
15 minutes at least.
Yeah.
At
He
least
talks
15.
so
1
fast.
minute is about 15 minutes in HD cadence.
Yeah.
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 And,
And we love
still
that
the
about
same.
HD.
Love that. I can remember being in Las Vegas. I think it was at DEF CON and going to the Japanese restaurant that is now no longer there at Caesar's Palace and having Wagyu beef with HD. And it
Oh.
was amazing. And I run into
HD was at the Paris. Well,
it,
Sans Pen Test Hack Fest
yes.
at Paris. I remember that.
Yep. And like it amazes me.
After the show,
A-
I'll tell you why I remember that so vividly.
It's one of those things like HD is such a luminary in our industry, and the fact that 15, maybe even 20 years later, and not having a huge interaction with HD over the years, just here and there, that I can walk up to HD and go, "Oh, hey Larry, how are you doing?" I'm like, you remember who I am?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Oh,
That-
he's got a great memory,
He
even
does.
for
Yeah,
idiots
he
like
does.
me.
What's that?
He's got a great memory of people. That dude his brain runs at about 5 times the speed of anybody else I know.
Well, that will
Just like his computer that used to compile Metasploit really fast.
that will conclude this edition of Ball Security Week.
Woohoo!
Larry, what's your favorite hacker movie?
Well, that's a good question. I'd have to go with either The Matrix or Sneakers.
Hmm.
So with that,
No, but I asked you one.
oh,
Come on.
uh,
Before we close out, 10 seconds.
The Matrix.
Larry, take us out.
Over and out.